You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined right now with Brad Hunt. He's running the camera. We're out here getting ready for our archery season. We thought today we'd talk real quick about our broadhead tuning. We're about ready to embark on an epic archery season. We got 3-4 weeks of archery elk hunting in front of us, getting our bows completely dialed. I'm really excited. There's a few things that have come up in the last couple of weeks as we've been preparing that I thought I would share with you, just kind of our experiences right now. The first thing I'm going to get into is I've been shooting with my field tips, and now it is time to shoot the broadheads. And I'm going to go over that transition, what that's like, what that means, what we're doing, because it's really important. So, Brad, I have just switched from my field tips over to my broadheads. Okay, here's my broadhead. This is a Valkyrie Archery Jaeger 200 grain broadhead. Let me set this bow down real quick, and I'll show you the broadhead. I really like this system. Brad's shooting Annihilator. He really likes that. We both have the same arrows. These are Black Eagle X Impact micro diameter, same fletching, which is right helical, heat vein. And then you can see the Valkyrie head has this, you can see it has the center pin on it, and it with some bushings at the back. And what that does is inside, when I slide it into this micro diameter shaft arrow along with the collar there, it provides a lot of stability because that broadhead is actually back in here. So if I were to hit a bone or glance off something, a lot of times on a micro diameter shaft, you have a lot of torque up here. You can snap off the broadhead right at the tip when it enters the animal. Well, Brent Hahn, who's the founder and inventor of Valkyrie, he came up with this center pin system to fix that. Now, Brad, on the other hand, he's running something similar where Black Eagle has come up with an insert that's about yay long that aids in front of center weight and provides that stability so that you can use more of a standard broadhead in there. And so Brad is shooting the insert tip, the FOC tip by Black Eagle on his X Impact shaft, and then he has a standard Annihilator head, but he could also just swing by any shop and buy broadheads at Cabela's. I'm setting up a dozen of those myself. The weight and flight should be very similar. So I have the option of, if I were to run out of arrows or whatever, I like the idea of being able to throw on any broadhead I want. It doesn't have to be Valkyrie. So I'm doing a little bit of both, but that's the setup. So when I switch, I decided to go with vented because although Valkyrie offers the non-vented, which is nice because it's a little quieter sometimes, but I'm not getting really any noise out of this broadhead. Isn't whistling. It's flying very, very close to what my field tips are. In fact, identical right now. So what a lot of guys do is they get their field tips. They shoot all year. They go to TAC. They do all this field tip shooting, but they don't really spend a lot of time getting their broadheads and their arrows tuned and set up. And so they end up throwing broadheads on just before they leave. And what they don't realize is how bad the flight can be from field tip to broadhead. And there's a lot of things that play into it. But let's say your bow's well tuned. When you stand in front of, let's say you're paper tuning it, you're shooting your arrow through some paper, arrow pumps through, there's no rip or tear. It shows that the paper shows you that the arrow's not going through with any up, down, left, right. It's going straight, which is great because then your arrow in theory should fly straight no matter what the wind is doing and so forth. All of that's great. All of that's good. But then what happens is you take an arrow like this and you throw basically a fixed blade broadhead on the front, and now you've completely changed this arrow. It didn't really matter. I've been shooting tight groups out to 90 with field tips, and everything's been great. Real tight groups. Then I throw these broadheads on, and guess what? Arrows are all over the place. Okay, what happened? What's going on there? Why am I getting some arrows here, some arrows there, some flying with the field tips? Well, every arrow has a spine, and every arrow is a little bit different, but every arrow generally has a weak spot. Somewhere, as they form the carbon, they end up with like a seam. And there's always just a little bit more carbon on one side than another on the wall. It's not exactly perfect, but there's always a weak side of the arrow, a strong side and a weak side. Okay. And what you end up with is different as the arrow comes off the bow. It's going to flex where the arrow is the weakest, whatever the weak part of the spine is. So the overall spine of the shaft this is a 250 spine shaft. That's the rating of how stiff this overall shaft is. But there's something called dynamic spine, which is where there's still another weak spot on the shaft somewhere where that seam is, or how the manufacturing goes together, or just because it's not perfectly exact all the way around on the carbon. So regardless, the point is there's a weak spot of the spine. So when this arrow comes off, it flexes in the direction of the weak spot every time. It bends. And then it straightens out and flies. Well, that weak spot of the shaft, you really want every single arrow lined up to the same weak spot, because then they all will bend exactly the same as they leave the bow, and then their flight will mimic each other. But if you have one arrow, let's say it's stiff like this, and the stiff part's on top, the weak spot's on the bottom. Boom, you shoot. Next arrow, it's the opposite. Now it bends a different way and then straightens out. It'll land in a different spot because you have a fixed blade on here. It's like having fletchings on the front and on the back. Now you have planing, wind coming up on the front of the arrow. It comes off at a little bit of an angle and then straightens out. It just affects the flight of the arrow. So what you want to do, and what I did yesterday, I threw my broadhead on, and I aimed at the target. I was at 20 yards, shot, and that arrow hit dead center. Okay, next arrow I grabbed, just like my field tips, flew the same as my field tips. Next arrow, screwed on the broadhead, shot, and it was left and low. Came back to my bow, like this, and before I shot them, I marked them all. So you can see right here, maybe you can, maybe you can't, Brad, but there's a little black line right there.
Yep.
On the nock, so I can keep track of positions. Okay. I put that nock at the bottom, like so, and I just rotated the arrow. And then I shot again. See where it hit. If it didn't hit where I wanted it to, I come back and I rotate again. And I keep searching until I flip the arrow around, because it's a 3-fletch, and I rotate again. And I keep doing that until I get the arrow lined up how I want, till it's shooting exactly like my field tips. And sure enough, one after the other, all I have to do is keep rotating that shaft on the nock and keep shooting and confirming until they're all hitting my spot.
Yep. And so what they actually call this is nock tuning.
Nock tuning.
Yep.
And a lot of guys don't realize that this is a thing.
Yep.
And you can, so like my Black Eagle Rampage arrows, which are a little thicker, they're not a micro diameter, I rarely have to nock tune any of them.
Yeah.
For some reason, that weak spot isn't really strong or evident. But on other arrows, like my X Impact, which I like for their slim and excellent delivery, of great FOC kind of design, like I like to shoot with my Valkyrie system, I have to do a little bit of tweaking and nock tune every arrow.
Yep.
Doesn't take but a few minutes, but now I know for a fact, without a doubt, that this arrow hits exactly where I want it to hit.
Yep.
Every time I shoot, I know that this arrow combo out to 80, I watch it every day because I shoot these every day. I don't shoot field tips anymore. I'm done with field tips. I'm only going straight up this arrow. So if I had a problem with some flight with my broadhead arrow combo, I'd know, because I shoot 10 arrows into this target and make sure they're all on all the time, practicing with them. If my bow came out of tune, things were shifting, I'd know about it. So when I hit the field, all I can do is sharpen these things up, get them razor sharp. I have a bench grinder that helps me do that. Valkyrie sells that. Other options are out there for other heads. But I'm going to sharpen these suckers up and hit the field. And I'm very confident that my sight, my bow, everything is tuned. Every broadhead is tuned to my arrows. I know going out there that my arrows hit where they're supposed to hit.
Yep.
I remember 15, 20 years ago when I was doing this, I'd shoot my field tips, then I'd just screw on my broadheads.
Like the day before the hunt.
The day before the hunt. And I just go out and hunt as if it was going to be the same.
Yep.
And we would sometimes shoot our head a couple of times, but you're always worried about it because you didn't sharpen it or it didn't sharpen well. And so you're like, I don't want to dull it up. So you just shoot it, make sure it's in the ballpark at like 20, 30 yards, and then you move on. And some of the most frustrating, a lot of guys back then, they would just sight they would just take their sight and they would sight into their broadheads, which would be completely different impact left and right, completely up and down different. But even then, because they're flying different than your field tips, even then, you still have the dynamic shaft, dynamic spine issue that you need to line up. And so a lot of guys don't really know that when they're hitting left and they're hitting one arrow up high, that it's not really their form or their shooting that's the problem. It's their tuning. They haven't nock-tuned their arrow. So I hope that helps. That is a really important part of getting your bow dialed for the season. Make sure that you nock-tune these arrows with the broadheads you're going to shoot. If you're shooting mechanical, it doesn't really matter. They often fly almost exactly like they don't always. There is some planing that can happen, but for the most part, you get away with murder when you run mechanicals. That's why I think it's kind of a lost art back east where mechanicals have been so big. They don't really have to worry too much about arrow flight because they can pretty much rely on the flight they're getting from their field tips and just screw on their mechanicals and go. But if you're shooting elk and moose and big critters, or you just, like us, are a big fan of the bone-breaking penetration with a fixed blade, no failure points, all of that, well then, you need to learn how to get your bow tuned and your arrows tuned.
Yep.
With your bow, with your broadheads, all that tuning. Like there's so much more that goes into it. You can't get away with that sloppy stuff that you can with a mechanical. So hope that cleared up some stuff. Right now we're doing a huge giveaway with Go Hunt. We're dropping films every Sunday. Big bear season wrap up 3-part series, and you could get entered to win a PSE bow, a dozen arrows, Black Eagle arrows. You can get what else?
The new Eberly stock Recon Bino harness. Annihilator broadheads. 10% off the Go Hunt gear shop.
You get entered to win a $500 gift card at the Go Hunt gear shop right now. So if you buy the digital maps, which I highly recommend, get the Go Hunt digital maps. If you don't have them, get them. They have superb satellite imagery. The 3D tilt and pan is excellent. The range finding tool is excellent.
Yep.
They're adding new features to it all the time. You can get all 50 states for the same $50, but it's not really $50 because if you buy it right now with the code GRITTY, you get a $20 gift certificate to the Gear Hunt Gear Shop. So Go Hunt Gear Shop. So it's kind of a win. For $30 essentially, you can get the maps right now. It's a no-brainer. You can download an entire unit with one touch of a button with all the layers instead of like one square at a time. It's all high resolution. There's so many cool features about it. I don't recommend you scrap your other apps. Keep them. Have multiples on your phone. Get to know them all. But you can easily transport your existing routes and waypoints and everything into Go Hunt with a few clicks of a button. There's a video on Go Hunt shows you how to do it super easy. So you want to go do that. And there's another giveaway that's going on right now with Stealthy Hunter, our good friend Ryan Lampers. He wants people to go to Stealthy and buy as much Stealthy as they can afford. And so he put together a big package for everybody. He's got an PSE Evo XF.
Yep.
He's got arrows. He's got
pass to the
broadheads.
Western Hunting Summit.
Pass to the Western Hunting Summit. I think that's like $1,600.
Yep. Crispy boots.
Stone Glacier pack.
Yep.
There's a whole bunch, actually.
$300 to the Stealthy shop.
So big giveaway over there. But also, again, you win because you get 10% off if you use the code GRITTY at Stealthy anyway. So site-wide, everybody gets a discount. Discounts and deals everywhere right now, and prize packages. So go over there and support Ryan and Hillary if you like what they're doing, like what we're doing. And I would recommend the CBD sleep gummies. I love those. I use them every night. They're not melatonin based. I'm having a good night's rest. I like the CBD gummies in general, just for health and wellness, joint health especially. the probiotics for your gut, their detox, their Digest Plus. All those things are really helping with gut health and overall wellness. They got the glassing pads and the rifle covers. I think every hunter needs those. You get 10% off using the code GRITTY right now. Normally it's like free shipping, but you get even better. Right now you get 10% off. So every time you shop over there, you're entered to win in the prize package, which they're going to announce at the end of the month. So you got between now and the end of the month to get in on that. So a couple of giveaways. Go check it out. Go hunt. Stealthy. Shop all over there. And anybody else that we're working with, you need game bags, you need trekking poles, you need all that. Links are below in the description field of the video. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting us. We really appreciate all the support. Stay gritty.